utter this because it was one of his favorites. I'm Paul, I was his sponsor, he was my co-sponsor. My first sponsor, Hap, taught us to co-sponsor. He felt that he wanted us to take his inventory. He wanted us to find fault with him. He wanted us to find all his little negative nooks and crannies and point it out, and that took a pretty strong character for him. So he believed in treating us like co-sponsors, which really taught us to be sponsors. And the real life of a sponsor is not to tell a sponsee what to do. The real life of a sponsor is to tell a sponsee what I do. It's like the steps. The steps don't tell you what to do. They're in past tense. They tell you what people did, and we have an invitation to follow that. And so Ray loved that. He loved that non-control, that all-weather reality. And he gave me the nickname All-Weather Friend. Truly, he was the all-weather friend. It's like when you walk into a room and you turn on the light, right? There's no more darkness. The darkness is gone, right? And so you're free to move in the light. Well, that's why this is so powerful today, because Ray was a glimpse of that light. You know, everybody loved Ray. I don't remember, and I was his sponsor, hearing negative comments about Ray. And if anything, it was, we miss him or want to see him. It was more of a longing than anything else. He was my friend. He blessed me. He blessed me with friendship. He blessed me with that light. You know, when you get into that light, you're free to move around. You don't have to worry about falling over stuff. And that was what he gave me, was that freedom and that feeling of being free. And we had so much fun and laughter. I used to lead a meditation. They say I taught a meditation, but to me it was more like I served. I just showed up and I was the guy they said that was teaching, but there's no such thing as teaching meditation, as Anna knows. That it's just something that everybody's free to find your own way. But we had a meditation in Cumberland once a week, and Ray would drive all the way from down here up to Cumberland to sit with me for an hour and maybe a half hour to an hour talk after in the parking lot, sometimes in the rain. And that was the fun one. You remember that one because you're soaking wet, right? Because we didn't have sense to stand out of the rain. And then he would drive all the way back here just for a meditation. And so my favorite meditation with Ray, you understand some of these people at this meditation were professional people, doctor, a professor, business owners. There were some professionals there. Liam came to one of the meditations. They were fashionably late and walked in during the meditation and sat down. It was lovely. But in this meditation, Ray came in and he was a little late. Everybody was in the meditation. We were all and Ray, in my meditation, you had three ways you could do it. You could sit in a chair, you could sit in yoga style meditation, or you could lay back. And Ray liked to lay down, because we put out the meditation mats. They were like gymnastic mats, and so you could lay down on them during my meditation. So Ray liked to lay down. So he laid back, and I think he was working in Moorfield or somewhere when he was with Stephanie. He was working up in Moorfield or somewhere up there. And he came down that night from there and stopped at the meditation. So he was tired, he was fatigued, and during the meditation we're sitting there and Ray laid back, and all of a sudden we heard now I really loved that. Like, I was like, this is a real meditation. Like, these guys are gonna suffer. And for 45 minutes we heard different tones of it was like TV. You couldn't have made this up. Anyway, this is the best part. At the end, I hit the singing bowl and bring everybody out of the meditation, and he wakes up and he goes, "Man, that was a great meditation." So, when you turn a light on, the light is there, right? And Ray gave us glimpses of that. If you have faith, the fierce faith that he had, he was more rigorously honest than any sponsee I've ever worked with. He really had a quality of just not having to protect an ego. And that was just a lovely thing that I would like to be more like, actually. But when you turn on that light, you realize that you can say, well, he was a light. Or you can just say, Ray was light. Thank you.
I want to tell you that Paul, who just spoke, also suffered the loss of his son. That's what he got Raymond. I want to thank the rest of our 5 children who put all this together. And Krista, Anna, Tanone, and Pierce. A friend of mine from Israel called me before the service, the rabbi, and he said, you should tell your fellow Catholics that, and other non-believers, that King Solomon, just like Christ, was approached by a Pharisee, given a coin, trying to trap him. Who should we obey, Caesar or Judaism? And you can see Christ, who was a real man, flip it back to him and say, whose picture's on there? And he says, Caesar. So render therefore to Caesar what Caesar's, and to God what is God. So my friend's telling me about Solomon being approached in the same way. When things are going good, how should we pray? And when they're going bad, how should we pray? So Solomon took a rock and etched on the wall 3 letters from the Hebrew alphabet that become an acronym for a phrase. I think it was Gimel and Zain and Yud, the 3rd, 7th, and 10th letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And the acronym means, this too shall pass. You get it? The good and the bad. Until it's our time. Liam, why don't you come up here? Are you here, Liam? Bless. Thank you.
Sorry, I'm a little tall. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
So, I'm Liam. Ray was my sponsor, and I got to call him a brother. And I really miss him a lot right now. But even when he and I were having an argument or mad at each other, Ray never ceased to treat me with the utmost kindness. And he taught me a valuable lesson in that with the people that we love, the people that I love. I don't need to take my day out on them. There was never a man that I felt more comfortable sharing everything with. I didn't have a strong father growing up, and Ray became like the older brother that I always wish I had, sort of guide me through the rough times. And by the grace of Ray and God, I'm still sober. And so Paul mentioned the meditation. So Ray and I went down one time, and of course we're on Franklin people time, we're running late. And Ray said we're gonna meet at the Spring Mills Walmart. I'm like, all right, I'll be there. Of course I'm waiting for like 30 minutes. And then Ray shows up and I'm like, all right, let's go. So we get in the car, we're talking about everything from spirituality to politics to all this stuff that I'm not gonna share with you on the specifics, of course. And we're having a grand old time. We stop at Cumberland at a rest stop, we're just enjoying it, man. That was like my favorite memory with my brother. And we finally get down to Cumberland for the meditation, and then we see the parking, and there isn't a parking spot, but there's a corner between the road and the last car. And he goes, "You can fit there, man, we're late." I'm like, dude, I don't want to do this, but so I try to finagle my way in there, and I couldn't do it. And he goes, "Do you want me to try?" I'm like, "Yeah, go for it." Ray made it worse. But of course, we were like 20 minutes late, so we had to just go in, and I said, "All right, if I get a ticket, then I'm meant to get a ticket." I didn't get a ticket, but that was a really surreal experience. I remember laying next to him on the floor. He didn't fall asleep this time, but I have a lot of good memories with him. The last memory I had with him, we went to IHOP, and we're out there at 2 in the morning, just talking in Charlestown. We hear gunshots. We look at it for a minute, and then Ray, being Ray, just goes, "Anyway, I was saying." It was beautiful, man, and I love that man very much, and he's taught me a lot, and I'm forever grateful for his family for embracing me and giving me the chance to, be a part of this. When I met Larry, he called me by my first and middle name, Liam Patrick. That's what my grandpa used to call me, so immediately I felt at home with the Irish Catholic family of the Franklins. Yeah. To hell with the non-believers, right? Anyway, I'm gonna end before I say anything too blasphemous, but right? Yeah. I love you, Ray. Thank you for teaching me what it means to be a man.
Anyone else that wants to share any stories? I know Rex had one about he didn't like the way Raymond would delay meetings. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Hey everybody, I'm Rex, and I usually follow that with I'm a grateful alcoholic. Ray and I met Ray in the rooms, and our sobriety dates were right close to each other for a long time. And Ray used to, we generally start with the younger ones first when we celebrate in the clubhouse that we were in. One of the things that Ray would do when he started a celebration was have a few minutes of meditation. And it used to drive me crazy. I mean, we all sit there in silence. I come to a meeting to have a meeting, not to sit in silence. Paul talking about a meditation and things. And one day I guess the second or third time this happened, I said to Ray, "Man, you're wasting a lot of time doing that. What's going on with that?" And he goes, "Well, how else do you let God in?" I said, "What? God can't get here unless you calm your heart, calm your mind, give him a chance." And it floored me. I had no argument for that. And I mean, that's one of my favorite memories of Ray, when he just kind of shut me down. Because I'll keep that forever. He used to start all his shares with, "I don't want to drink today." You heard Paul say that. Yesterday morning I was at a meeting and it just came out of my mouth. I don't know where it came from. I don't ever really share that, but I said it in a meeting yesterday morning. He helped everybody he was around. And, you heard it said already today, I don't know anybody that has anything bad to say about him. We were worried about him. The last couple of years been kind of troubled for him. And every time I saw him, especially here recently, he looked a little better every time I saw him. And I guess it was maybe 2 weeks before the asthma attack. I said, "Man, you're looking a little less homeless every time I see you," because he had that huge beard. He was just embracing himself. I guess he finally found himself. And Liam talks about late night talks and things. It was one night we go to a meeting on Saturday nights called OMD, the Outright Mental Defectives. And Ray set up a Zoom meeting because we had a snowstorm and nobody could get there. He went to work and set up a Zoom meeting and sent us all the links so we could log in and actually have a meeting together. This is the kind of guy he was, and that's what I'll always remember about him. He would give you the shirt off his back and never want anything back. If it helped you and made you better, that was, what he did. I never again, you take for granted how people are around. You see him, you don't see him, but not seeing him anymore really kind of hurts my heart. And we all have to deal with that in however we deal with it. Everybody's got a different way. I know he missed his mom terribly, and he gets to be with her now, which is cool. But there's just so many little things that all of us had from Ray. If you spent any kind of time with him, try to remember those things. Take them with you. Keep them close to your heart. Share them with other people so Ray's memory lives on. He was a real pleasant man to be around. I always had a quick one-liner when we were in, not in mixed company, and it was always a fun thing because you just never know what he was going to say. You didn't know, you didn't put him on speakerphone, and I'm kind of the same way, and I relate to that. And for everybody that's here, I am sorry for your loss because I know I feel it too. Thanks.
If anyone else wants to say anything, but if not, that's okay too. Make sure you eat, and coffee back there. You want to take some, we have the ball till 6 o'clock, so you can eat till 7. After that, you have to take it.
Lawrence, I think I'll jump up. I know Pierce wants to get up, but I've heard a few things about meditation and some different things with Ray. We go back years in the martial arts. Can everybody hear me okay? Yeah. So Raymond at one point was the youngest kid in the martial arts class. There were some of us that got to a certain level that we would work with all the kids. We had a heck of a group of kids. And we used to call Raymond Twinkle Toes because he always kind of walked on his toes and stuff, But that whole group of kids kind of made us, the older folks, well, we're still kids too. We're like in our 20s or something. I know, we're going back a ways, aren't we? Yeah. But we go to tournaments and everything, and they would always look up to us. And of course, we would always bring them along and try to bring them to another level. So it's kind of a family thing. And I suppose through the meditation and everything, a lot of that goes back to the martial arts again too, because we would always do the meditation in a quiet time and focus and that type of thing too. So a lot of the discipline was there. But I like to attribute a lot of what you guys are saying, and Pierce, Fanone, all you guys. Lawrence is the guy that family came first for years. And a lot of what people were saying about Ray, what I know about Pierce, and the rest of the family, comes from this guy. Yeah. And would always put the kids first. So it's the discipline, it's learning responsibility, and everything that family does, and it radiates out into a community, and here we are. And I've been privileged to call these guys my family for a long time. Love you, man.
Love you too. I never beat these in a fight. I think I outpointed him only once when you left karate and came back.
Tough cookie.
Hey, how y'all doing? I'm Ray's younger and much balder brother, Pierce. I wrote a little something, and well, first I want to start off. You have to forgive me because my ADHD ass got to write everything down. There's 3 glaring things that my big brother and I had in common. We both hated cold weather. We hate being cold, hated being wet. We're both warm weather, spring, summer lovers. That's why, the timing of this is horrible because perfect hiking weather. That's what me, Fanone, and Ray, the brothers, that's how we spent our time together, was hiking, being outdoors, exploring new places. Number 2, Ray and I were just like our mama. We hated being barefoot. You would never find us without socks on, okay? And I think the nurses at Winchester, they got really damn sick and tired of me asking them to put socks on my brother. I'm like, this guy hates being freaking barefoot. Let's get some socks on the dude. So Ray, hopefully you appreciate that. And then third thing, this is kind of funny, but kind of not. There's a phenomenon in West Virginia. I don't know if it's a Jefferson County thing or a Eastern Panhandle or just a West Virginia thing. It's called the West Virginia stare. Him and me would always joke about, why does everybody stare? What are the, you know? So Ray would always joke, you know, if West Virginia had a Major League Baseball team, it'd be called the West Virginia Stare. So that would kind of help with the context of what I'm about to write. So I wrote a little poem in my car in honor of my brother. And I was at a funeral years ago, and a buddy a best friend of the gentleman who died wrote a poem, and I always remembered that, how special it was. So just had to bear with me. It's called My Big Brother. My brother, my friend, you left in a hurry. We bitched to one another when we'd see a snow flurry. You spent your life helping others with struggle, while spending time at home with your pets you would snuggle. As kids, you stuck my head in an anthill, but even after all that, I looked up to you still. All the wrestling and watching pay-per-view, the grab-assing we did, I'm shocked the neighbors didn't sue. As brothers, we would always enjoy a hike. I idolized you since I was a little tyke. The dude I would call when I needed advice to help me avoid rolling the dice. We had so much left to do together, enjoying the outdoors in this beautiful weather. Raymond, my friend, and my big brother, I could not imagine loving another. We traveled the country and explored the West. My brother, my friend, you were simply the best. We bitched about traffic in the West Virginia stare while enjoying a meal in a comfortable chair. We both love the ladies in their beautiful way. Love you, Erica. My big brother would always tell me what I should say. We lost our mama not too long ago. You and I were there when she decided to go. We kept her comfy in her last day. Her soul shines in each morning ray. Meeting your friends and the folks you helped a ton, God Almighty decided that you, sir, were done. The Lord called you home at his chosen time, and I'm coping with this while writing a rhyme. Raymond, my friend and my big brother, when I needed help, I could seek out no other. We played phone tag right up until you passed. I drove here from Georgia incredibly fast. Raymond, my friend and my big brother, I couldn't imagine loving another. I walked at the park where we used to play ball. My brother, my friend, I wish you would call. You went home to our Lord and our beautiful mother. God accepted into his kingdom my incredible brother. Raymond, my friend and my big brother, God made thee special and like no other. You're gone from this earth, and as sad as I am, I know in the next life I will see you again. Love you, bro.
That's Sergeant Pierce Franklin, Afghanistan veteran, and right next to him is his wonderful fiancée, Erica, who outranks him. She's a major and a veteran of Iraq. They're quite a couple. Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? Just go ahead. This is the lady that gave Raymond new teeth. I know he lost a couple fighting.
I wasn't going to get up, but now that he said that, I will, because now the world knows that. And there was only a few of us that knew that. So I'm a 31-year-old nurse this year. I'm not 31, but I'm 31 years nursing. I met Raymond in 2017, getting harm reduction with syringe excess up at the health department, and many of you in this room was a part of that. Because we needed to help our fellow West Virginians who were dying and stop that, right? fell in love with Raymond as a friend for the rest of that for life. I can remember always touching the side of his cheek and looking at his beautiful eyes. But he would come in often to clinic, running late, as the Franklins usually do. He'd been to urgent care, getting an antibiotic for the teeth, right? Trying to keep them down, because, if you know anything, and many in this room are in recovery, so teeth become a big issue, right, in recovery. So during the pandemic, working 196 days straight, 12 and 16 hours, I don't know how this old woman did that, but I would do it again for my community if I had to. I had a little extra money in my pocket, and I called Ray one day and I said, hey, it's time to get these teeth taken care of. So it wasn't only about the money, it's about the mind doing that, because then you have a fear because there's going to be pain, right? But one of our National Guard who was helping us through the pandemic was also a dentist, and he went back into his office when things opened up. So he worked with us and Ray and did it in stages, checked on him every night and the next day how his pain level was to make sure that everything was going okay there, and there was nothing that we were risking with his recovery, right? And then it's a process, like everything. And then the day that the teeth went in, I got a picture from the dentist office and said, look at this smile. And I said, Ray has always smiled with his eyes, right? But then it was just a pleasure to eat meals with him and watch how much easier that was. And he would look at me and say, I can eat now because of you. And I'm like, no, you had the courage to do it. God provided the way for us to do it. Which will lead me to my last thing. Ray and I had many time over dinners and lunches, and just about a month before he passed, he'd come to the hospital and had lunch with me. And now I know, with meeting his dad, where all of this, philosophy comes from. We would have very in-depth conversations, and often it was about religion and God, and I'm a woman of faith as well. So there's zero doubt in my mind that Ray Franklin is in heaven with his mother today and in a much better place than all of us. And one day we will all be together, because the circle is never broken.
Hi, I'm Tanya. I'm an alcoholic. I too have ADHD, and I had to write down what I was going to say. And Ray, he would always talk about his ADHD and his mess and his desk. He was always super insecure about it. Everything Ray said always sounded so profound, to me anyways. I was always memorized when he spoke, drawn to him like a turtle to the ocean or a horse to water. I'm not the only one to have seemed to feel that way. He was a wonder, remarkable, genuine, a beautiful spirit, and a soulful person. He gave and gave and gave his love to everyone and everything around him. How blessed I feel to have known him and to have felt his love and compassion and his understanding. I hope his spirit will forever know how much he means to me till this very day, and how much he has helped me and so many others in recovery and just everyday life. He helped me on those wet blanket days, we like to call them, when you just can't seem to get out of bed because everything was so heavy. At 1 a.m. when I just couldn't seem to find the courage to go home and face troubled times, he and I would talk, and he would comfort me until we both finally had to leave the OMD church parking lot. He was and always will be a huge part of my life and everyone here. How lucky we are to have known such a beautiful and tremendous person. I will, and we will all cherish all those moments. You, Ray, we're physically here with us, and we all know that you're not physically here with us anymore, but we all know that we are blessed to have wonderful memories and conversations. One of our last conversations, Ray texted me and said, I'm just suffering from a broken heart. I'm not trying to move on, just trying to make peace. I know you're at peace now, my beautiful, amazing friend. We miss you and love you so much. these lyrics from a Zach Bryan song. I told him that it always remind me of him, and this is the last thing that I'll share. Well, the love that you got is the love that I need. It is in the air of these hills, in the blood that I bleed, and the love that you gave for the awful shape I'm in led me through the day so I can find my hope again. Thank you.
So I'm gonna get up here and I'm not gonna cry. That's the goal. I was thinking about what Paul shared about talking for 30 minutes after a meditation and how much of a lie that probably was. If anybody knew Ray, you have to edge your way out the door. I would be like, okay, Ray, I'm leaving. I'm off work now. I would get out to the car, and then the car would be a 30-minute standing in front of the car. And then I would get into the car, and I would have the door open, and it would be him standing there with his hand on the door. And I would close the door when I got a second, and then I would roll the window down, and then he would talk to me for a little longer. And then I would be like, Ray, I have got to go. I've got somewhere to be. That's all I could tell him, because if not, I would have been there for another hour. He did an impersonation of you. And the voice was on point. I never thought that you looked the way you did, though. He would be like, my dad would go, well, Raymond. And I was like, okay, all right. So I pictured you to have a beard, kind of like him, and be a little heavier. But he did get the voice on point. And we all know, he had his own things. I can look at all of his siblings, and I can see the different pieces of Ray. And it was just so insane when I went to the hospital. I'm just standing there, I'm looking at Pierce, and he's got the leg thing, and the hand on the hip, and the hand, I'm like, okay, I see that. And then you've got Fanone over there, and he's got the beard, and he's on the phone, and I'm just like, all right, I see that. And then I see his sisters, and I'm like, and there's the heart. He loved you guys so much. That's one thing that not in question at all. Family was a huge part of what he had in his life. And we got to have a lot of conversations about that spiritual journey and what we thought the afterlife might look like and how beautiful it would be. And those are some of my cherished moments.
Thank you, Steph.
He was a good guy and a very loving, caring person that I got the joy of standing beside for most of our recovery journey, and going to sessions every year and standing up when our year was called. And he wouldn't want us to be mourning him today. He would want us to be celebrating him and laughing like we have been and remembering all the funny things, the lateness. I always told him he was fashionably late. I was like, I know that if I want you to be somewhere, I say 30 minutes before the time that I want you to be there, because other than that, he might come right at the very end. And that's just how he was, and everybody knew that, and everybody loved him. So thank you, guys.
Well, anybody else? Oh, my brother, Raymond, another Raymond Franklin.
See, I've been short on the brothers. I'm going to disappoint a lot of you here. I'm born and raised in New York City, New York State. Now, I heard your brother talk about, there's a couple of things that I've noticed as a family member. How his brother talked about the West Virginia staff. You have to remember, these boys initially grew up in New York. It was all charm and suave. So when they met the lovely ladies they met, it was all well done, gentlemen. But I'd like to talk about another aspect of Raymond, if I may. My brother and I have always been close. Raymond Lawrence is always, because in our family had to differentiate all the Raymonds. Raymond Lawrence always had a good heart, always listened. He was big enough that when Raymond talked, you better make sure you listened. But the idea with Raymond was, my father and I, and my sisters and I, and even my dear wife, after a while, you'd see Raymond Lawrence in action, you'd see my brother in action. You know, my brother and I grew up, my brother and I were extremely close. We came from so close it makes me cry. But we came from hard scrabble, working class, Irish Catholic, New York City members. And we had a closeness and a bond as family members that never got shaken. However, I will say that there are certain characteristics you have. And my brother, older brother, I love him dearly. But everybody knows who grew up with Lawrence, Anthony Franklin. And my son back there is Raymond Anthony Franklin. I won't get you all confused. But my brother, he was a master tease, a mischievous genius. He was a good guy. He always had your back. He and I would go out, and whether we worked politically or whether we worked as brothers protecting each other or protecting our sisters, whatever the case is. And I've said that about protecting our sisters, and I've had people say, not supposed to say that anymore. I said, in my day growing up, you better damn make sure you took care of your sisters. But the thing with Ray was, man, he could be the biggest tease. He could get on your nerves like nobody else can. But then he had an oldest boy. Now, I know Raymond's been a great guy, Raymond Lawrence been a great guy, but I will tell you, his older sister, but his older sister, or his younger sister, he was very mischievous. And I will tell you that his father met his match when his son grew up. He was as much of a tease and a mischief maker as my older brother is, God bless him. Raymond Lawrence was clearly his equal. So when my brother, he was very an excellent parent, and he would try to maintain his temper. My nephew would get under his skin, and he was ready to pop his brains out his ears. My father and I would stand on the side, and my sisters, and we'd go, that's Larry. That's Larry. And that's one of the things that I remember most about him. He was a good kid, good-looking boy, bright, intelligent. He took seriously what he did. He had his difficulties. He dealt with them, but he always stood by his family. And as a family member, I can tell you, tough times and great times, Raymond Lawrence was always, as somebody else mentioned earlier, a solid rock. He was always a good guy. And I loved him as a niece. You know, when I first came down, I was, as you can tell by now, I'm not a man of few words. So I was actually going to sing. What's that? What's it, Larry?
Said you're a lawyer.
I am a lawyer. I was a lawyer, that's right. But I'm going to sing a song but I won't hurt your ears. It has to do about an old Irish folk song. It goes back to the 5th century. And it's had a currency today like no other. And I often think about it. I've been thinking about my nephew. And my wife has told me, when you get to this part, Raymond, don't start. He says, you're not going to make it through. Sometimes you came around to say Irishmen can be overly sentimental. They've had trials where they've had tears of sorrow. But their intensity, look, it's the only nation in the world that doesn't have anybody take taxes if you create, if you write, if you're a playwright, if you're a poet. You don't pay any taxes in Ireland. It's the only nation in the world because they've always noticed that tears can also be a very manly thing. They are things that joy. When I think about the life I've had, the nephews I've had, my son, his lovely wife, it's Raymond and Laura, my daughter Mary Alice, and her husband, Scott, who's outside with our grandson. I have tears of joy. And I think there's an old song called The Parting Glass. And it basically says in the end that it's worked to me, been my fate, or it's been the Lord's word, that my time has come, that I should go and you should stay. If such be the case, I rise up slowly and I gently say, and Raymond's watching over us, and I gently say, God bless you all. May joy be with you. And thank you for listening.
Make sure everyone eats. Come on.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm Jeff, and I'm also a friend of Raymond's. And I think I'll try to keep this short, because I'm so glad to see all the people's lives that Raymond has touched, to come into this room here. And it's just one of the things that I love is to see all of the joy and the happiness. Now I know that, under the circumstances, but when I say joy and happiness, I mean in our hearts. You know what I mean? That's the stuff that I have to hang on to, and that, that the light, somebody had mentioned about the light, and I think that is so important because that is what Ray was. He is, rephrase that, he is the light. And so I want to carry that in my heart. And I wanted to share this real quick because I'm so glad to hear everybody talking about how late Ray always was. Now, I knew that, but it's good to see other people that really know that because I fall into that same category. As a matter of fact, one of my friends has me in his phone as On Time Jeff because I'm always, that's a bad habit for me. Anyway, I just want to share that real quick, and I want to thank everybody for this beautiful layout and everything we have. And I'm going to have to run after this, but I wanted to share that. Thank you.
My name's Jimmy. I'm an alcoholic. Hey, Jimmy. Just like our friends here too. I met Ray 10 years ago in the room in Martin Street, and as soon as we met, we hit it off right away. I mean, he turned out to be a real good friend. Honest, unconditional love. That's what we do, and in our society, we care so much for each other. That's how we grow and we help others, And Ray, above and beyond, man. He helped people. I don't even know. We don't even know. And animals and anything that moves. I mean, he told the story of the raccoon that was hit and just recently he had a raccoon in the middle of the road, and Ray stopped his car and he got his jacket out and wrapped this raccoon up and tried to get him to the side of the road. And the raccoon's like, man, what are you doing? And he's, and the way Ray told it, it was just, it was something else. But that's just the way Ray was, man. He reached out when anyone anywhere reaches out for help. Ray was there, man. And I'm grateful that, you know, just to the showing today and the people that loved Ray and his family. Fortunately, I got to meet some of his family and help his dad and help with the house and some stuff that with his plumbing that I was able to do, and I'm grateful for that as well. The late night meeting that we have it's outright mental defectives, and we meet at 9:30 on Saturday nights, and generally, we usually waited for Ray because, like Jeff said, alluded to the tardiness. That's one of our character defects is to be late. So it's okay too. But you know the thing with Ray now, with the unconditional love, the fact that he helped so many people while he was alive, man. And then when I heard what he had done with the rest of his life, you know, with his organs, and now they're helping other people, you know, through his death. You know, he's still helping people and will forever, man. I mean, it incredible that one can do that, you know. And I just knew Ray for a quarter of his life, you know, but I felt like I knew him my whole life, and that's why I put on the book, I put the relationship, I put brother, you know, so when you see that on there, you're like, who's this guy, you know, so, but he is my brother, man, I love him, and we will meet again one day, brother, but not quite yet, I guess. Thank you.
Thanks.
My name's Robert, I'm grateful to come.
Hey, Robert.
And I hope y'all can hear me from here. Raymond, first month, well, I was the first month on March. And I must say, he just became such a good friend. He was like a young one, especially like, you know, anything I need, he does. I can't tell you. He Bob allowed him to get over his roof clean. Well, he always shows up. And I can remember as we went through the steps, you know, he was all 12 steps, and he just kept growing more and more. But what I've heard from everyone today, I've just heard no one mention how he loved his animals. His cats and his dogs. You know, I mean, he loved his family. That's for sure. We need to talk about him now because he loved taking care of his mother, her health was bad. You know, he enjoyed it. You know, giving her up, watching her, dressing her, whatever. You know, he didn't mind that at all. Doing work around, cutting trees and stuff around. He loved it. But he loved taking care of his family. He loved taking care of his pets. He really did. And he always wanted, you know, everybody to meet everybody else. He couldn't wait till his sisters came up here so he could introduce them to us. And, you know, and to this day, they never forgotten us. And we don't forget them. You know, he made quite an impression on everyone he met. You know, I can see it when people share it. But one thing I always, and he was quite philosophical. And he was always in love with sunshine. Some woman was in his life, breaking his heart. But he was always that strong character. I was there to help anybody with anything else. And, you know, like I said, I know I'll see him again. But he was always just like the younger brother I ever had, you know. Because he was always coming for advice. And he loved hiking. And was able to like do a few things. I gave my hiking stick I had that man. It had a compass in the top of it. It was wood and it had a sword in the middle of it. And I remember I gave him this little flashlight, a little tiny flashlight, but it would make it look like he said the first time he used it going hiking, he said, he lit up the whole trail. That's all he was talking about. And he just loved the hiking. You know, he come to sessions. He was my bunk mate at sessions until I got married. Yeah, and then they had to argue about it. Who was sleeping? But every sessions, you know, we were always there together, and he just always had a good time. And when we would leave, he'd pitch a tent and go sleep out in the woods for a while and go to meetings and stuff, you know, because that's just how he enjoyed it. You know? And he was just a great person. And I'm glad I could make it in there, definitely. So, see you soon, man. When the time comes, I'm like everybody else, I ain't in no hurry. Y'all have a good one.
Thanks.
If nobody has told you they love you today, I love you, and there's nothing you can do. Thanks for listening.
Hi, my name is Lee. Raymond and I were friends in college. Bring a lot of condolences from some of our friends from Chicago in the old days. And Ray and I met doing a play together, and I barely knew him. And then the next day, he was like my brother. And he, like a brother, I alternated between wanting to hug him and punch him in the face. Sometimes both at the same time. I'll remember him for how funny he was, how quick-witted, great imitations. He used to do your dad to us all the time. And then when we finally met him, I couldn't stop laughing because of how spot on the impression was. He had a way of giving people nicknames that was so funny. He was so good at it. I remember I was talking about this girl. I was obsessed with her eyes, and I told him that, and he said, about an hour and a half later, he goes, "Hey, why don't you call up Molly Magic Eyes and invite her out with us?" And I remember how smart he was. He was brilliant. He really had a lot of late night conversations like many of you, and really perspective-changing conversations. Taught me how to think a little bit differently than the way I was used to thinking. And I was in and out of touch with him over the years, but I was always happy to hear from him. I'd go months or years without hearing from him, and then I'd get a bunch of texts or a call. And, you know, he, like all of you said, he was a really great guy, and I'm gonna miss him. And I'm glad I got to see him a few years back before the pandemic, met my son. I also remember him for how kind he was to little children and animals. He loved little kids. I remember riding the L train in Chicago with him. He'd always take the time to smile at a little kid if one was looking at him. Anyway, thank you. Appreciate it.
I'm Linda. I'm an alcoholic. And I didn't know if I could do this. Ray was like a son to me, not against anything in his family. It's like an extra son, you know. I have a son too. And what Ray and I talked about was spirituality. You know, Ray has a really deep spirit. And he would come for dinner at our house, and after the meal was all over, we'd end up sitting at the table for hours and hours, talking about the universe and spirit and all the different understandings of God. Because we both felt that God was way too small a word. You know, and I'm going to miss those talks. Both of us struggled with the understanding of the way they talk about God in AA and God in the church and all this stuff. And the first day Ray walked into AA, we looked each other in the eye. He was just getting sober, and we had a conversation after the meeting, and we were instant friends. And somehow, after meetings, we'd end up talking. He'd tell me about his ex-girlfriend and his current girlfriend and people he wished he was girlfriends with. And I'd say, just slow it down, Ray, just slow down. You got to get your recovery first. And he did. You know, he started saying that thing, I don't want to drink today. And, you know, it just made sense. And we both love animals. And I'd say, bring your dog over, you know, bring your dog over. My dogs need somebody to play with, and he did. And I said, come for a meal. You know, you're working way too hard, come for a meal. And then we'd start talking, talk, and then be like, we both have to go to work tomorrow. You know, and the beauty of somebody who shares that same kind of feeling of what in the world is this universe about? And we didn't have to figure it out, just throw some questions out, challenge each other. That's a thing that you only find with a few people in the world. And I'll miss it, you know, I'll really miss it. Thank you for bringing us into your family, sharing that. And I gotta tell you guys, we had a meeting when we heard Ray was in the hospital. A bunch of us ran down there to be with him. And we ended up sitting in the waiting room, and we had an AA meeting. And it was all about each of us sharing our spirits. You know, what we believed, what we felt about Ray, sending energy for healing. I don't know if Ray got healed. I'm sure he did. I'm sure he felt it that night. But I'm telling you, we all got healed. That's the way Ray was. Healing everybody he came in contact with. Special person on this earth. Thanks.
I'm Ray's cousin, also Ray Franklin. We're cousins, but in a lot of ways we're like brothers. We talk all the time, text all the time. One of the big topics, you know, he's here and I'm up in New York, and one of the big topics, I'm sure a lot of you who know him, is the Yankees. Big Yankee fan. We always have fun with that. And you know, just a couple days after he passed away, I was at church with my daughter, and it was regular mass. You know, the music, the organist was playing pretty church music the whole time. And Ray just popped into my head, and not 30 seconds later, the music changed in a way. It was like, it almost sounded like an organ at Yankee Stadium. And I thought, you causing trouble up there already? You know, you guys know he could be a bit of a wise ass. And one of my memories, I have a million of them, but one of the anecdotes that I was just talking to my wife about this morning was I remember us, I think we were skeet shooting or playing baseball. We were kids, like 10, 12 years old. And our dads got us a soda to split. And he had it first, and then he handed me an empty can. And I was like, well, what the hell, man? He said, oh, sorry, my half was at the bottom, so I had to drink your half to get to mine. I was like, all right, thanks, buddy. Anyway, I got a million of those, but just, I'll miss him. He was the best. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, hi, I'm Raymond's younger sister, Anna, and I know my dad acknowledged a little bit all the people that helped make today possible, but I wanted to say in a special way to Linda and Tanya, who helped set up the room, and Erica, who put the beautiful flowers together. Raymond loved irises. Well, he loved all flowers. Robert talked about how much he loved nature and animals. He planted a bunch of irises in my mom and dad's backyard. And my mom was pretty immobile for a long time, but she could see the irises out of the window. So we wanted those for Raymond. And there's a lot of other people who I didn't thank that have helped us through the last few weeks. And that honestly has been one of the few, maybe the only silver lining in all this, is meeting so many people from the AA community and becoming more a part of your family and hearing more stories about Raymond. I share a lot with my brother, one of which, Linda talked about this, it was just a sort of a deep and wide-ranging spirituality that I know Paul has as well. And some of you know Raymond would help me with my retreats and workshops. And I kind of joked about this when we had the honor of attending an OMD meeting recently, with just that there are people, you know, all over the country, in DC, people live around the world that have gotten to meet Raymond, and the thing they would take away from this big retreat I would run was, man, wow, your brother, that was so great. Because he would say something wise from his very hard-earned wisdom, or share the teachings that he had learned. And this is kind of a funny story, but also one that I think elicits or demonstrates the kind of dark humor that he got through life with, and that I hope that we can all take with us. I know my siblings and I share it. You may have seen, and this may be too dark for some of you, so you can complain to me later, but there's a short video in here of Raymond kind of lying on a rock on the Maryland side of Harper's Ferry, like that area where you can go down and be near the water. We would take some of my students down and we'd float these lanterns. A lot of Eastern traditions, there is the practice of honoring loved ones that have passed. And you may have seen pictures of Beth here. Oh, timing. Raymond knew, he wanted me to tell this story. I wasn't planning on telling it, but Beth was a big part of Raymond's life, a huge part of his recovery. She was part of our family. She was no longer with us. But they were together a long time and had, you know, their ups and downs in their relationship. And he lit a candle for Beth and these floating lanterns. She had passed earlier that year, not that long before this. And the candle lit fire to the lantern. And so there was a ball of fire on the water floating. And he kept trying to rescue it. We both burst out laughing and said that this was a demonstration of their relationship. Which it was. My sister and I joked recently that they were like Sid and Nancy, which is, if anyone knows that reference, then you get it. But there was a lot of love there too. There's a lot I could say because, you know, it's Raymond and you all know him and that's why you're here. I think there was actually a couple different poems I wanted to read because he loved poetry and he loved, you know, teachers of different kinds. So I'll end with this poem, this prayer actually, but the one thing, I guess the other thing I just wanted to say, my dad kind of alluded to this and saying, you know, just tell your family you love them, tell your friends you love them. I just want to add to that, if, you know, unfortunately all of us have to deal with some sense of maybe regret or guilt because Raymond was taken from us so suddenly, and there's probably things we wish we would have said to him or patched through. And you know, with addiction, if you're the family of someone who's been through it or you've been through it yourself, it can be really hard because people have issues and you put up boundaries to deal with their issues, and sometimes that creates distance. So as close as my brother and I were sometimes I wish I had taken down some of my boundaries or pushed harder to come together. And but I know that he feels our love, and I know that he's with us today. So if you have some shit to work through, yes, I curse, with somebody, do it today, or do it soon. So this is from Thomas Merton, who some of you may know. He was a contemplative Christian monk who brought together East and West and lots of things in his life, and I encourage you to check him out. Raymond and I both loved him a lot, and I thought not only does this poem, this prayer kind of symbolize Raymond's life and his struggle. You know, he wanted to be here. He suffered a lot, but he wanted to be here. One of the last texts I had from him was like, well, last week sucked, but, you know, spring's looking up. I'm really looking forward to it. That's just a small window into Raymond. But this prayer of Thomas Merton came to me several times in my life at a difficult time, and it's something Raymond and I had talked about. And in revisiting it, I thought, wow, this really actually is a great poem for Raymond and how he walked through life, and I'm sure how he is still walking with us. So I encourage you just to kind of hear what you hear, let whatever comes up come up, even if it has nothing to do with the poem itself or the prayer itself. This is sometimes called the prayer of abandonment. My Lord God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. Nor do I really know myself. And that I think I am following your will does not actually mean that I'm doing so. But I believe the desire to please you does in fact please you. And I hope I have that desire in all that I'm doing. I hope I will never do anything apart from that desire. And I know if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it. I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost in the shadow of death. I will not fear, for you will never leave me to face my perils alone. Thomas Merton. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being here today.
Paul, I'm an alcoholic. Now for my official share. I'm sorry, guys. That's a joke from OMD. OMD meeting is a late night meeting. Sometimes goes on for an hour and a half, 2 hours, but Ray loved that meeting, and he was a huge part of that meeting. But I would share, maybe 10, 15 minutes. But then halfway, 3/4 through the meeting, I'd say, okay, now I'd start sharing again. And I'd say, well, that was my official share. So he loved that. He just really loved it. So I'm going to say this to the family because this describes Ray to me. I'm going to say this for you, okay? And for all of you. And I hope that you can carry this with you. Lord, make me an instrument of thy peace, that where there is hate, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth. Where there is doubt, I may bring faith. Where there are shadows, I may bring light. Where there is sadness, I may bring joy. Lord, grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, and to love than to be loved. For it's by self-forgetting that one finds. It's by forgiving that one is forgiven. And it's by dying to self that one awakens to eternal life. That reminds me of Ray. Thank you.
Anybody from the University of Chicago want to say anything?
Hi. I also have trouble following along with anything, so I've got notes on my phone.
What's your name?
Oh yeah, I'm Krista. I'm Raymond's oldest sister, and I'm the one of the siblings who knew him the longest. In fact, I came first, which I always have reminded him. And when he was born, apparently I refused to say his name. I think I could, I just didn't want to. So I called him Brother, so he was known as Brother for years, officially. I'm gonna cut out a lot of what I was gonna say, but when we were growing up, we didn't get along so well, and then we did. he had a hard time in school, even though he was completely brilliant. He just wasn't designed for a traditional school structure of any sort. He was a seeker and a curious person, and he's not someone who wanted to take direction, take orders. He knew, he had his own compass. So he got a lot of negative feedback, but he pursued, he persisted, and that's one of his strongest character attributes, is that he would make mistakes, or he'd have a really tough learning experience, and he was the first person to say that a lot of he brought on himself. He's very humble that way. He might have a period of self-pity, but then he'd get through it, and he'd keep going, and he'd keep going, and he'd keep going. He faced a lot. A lot of people in here have shared his experiences, and know a lot about him, and it's really been our privilege to have a new family. And I have never, I'm rambling, I know, I'm sorry. I have never seen an outpouring of people at a hospital like I did for my brother, for our brother. There were people constantly there keeping vigil. We just, the four of us and my dad, and, my daughter was with us a lot of the time when I could sneak her into the ICU, and, or she'd be out in the waiting room. But the amount of people who didn't just come for 5 minutes, they came day after day. They came and they spent hours. They gave us love and support, and it was genuine. It wasn't just like, well, I feel like I have my obligation. No, everyone was hurting. Everyone was celebrating how amazing my brother was. And, if there's some comfort that I feel right now, it's that, all these people loved my brother. They knew who he was. I think our immediate family understands now how much more Raymond gave to the world than we saw. I mean, we knew it, but to see it magnified, what a blessing. And those of you who are still here, a lot of people have stuck around. Thank you. Those are people who set up, and stayed with my brother in the hospital. Thank you. The only other, I'll stop, but I did mention he was a seeker, and he was always opening to learn. And I also want to say he was a spectacular uncle, youngest. He loved children. He loved my kids as if they were his own. And he's godfather to my eldest, who did the first reading today. And whenever I'd come to West Virginia, he would make a point of spending time with my kids. I was like, I don't care if you spend time with me. And I did. I wanted to spend time with them. I'm like, I knew how important he was to my children and what a good influence he was, and how important that relationship would be to them. And he was, he just, Maura, we were guests at a meeting, I think Anna probably mentioned as I was in and out, OMD meeting the week after, or the night technically after he finally, he passed on the 22nd, but I don't know if you realized that he was an organ donor, so he was at the hospital for a couple extra days, and that was its own, please be an organ donor, but it's challenging. It's challenging. Maura shared at the meeting, and she said, Raymond was my best friend. I love Raymond. This is my 3-year-old. I have love in my heart for Raymond. She just said it, shared in a room full of adults. And that's, my kids know that. My kids knew how much he loved them without condition, and he was there for them always, and he will be there for them always. And I just thank you all for being here today and staying and all the words you're sharing, and that's all I have to say for now. So, thank you.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I'm an alcoholic. Hi. Somehow I missed the book. Is this it?
Yes,
that's
the
I'll
one.
get to that in just a
Please
second.
sign the book up here, everybody.
Yeah, I certainly will. Hey everybody, can you guys hear me? Because I'm afraid of microphones.
Yeah. I'll pass it around. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Man, I'm so grateful we all get to be together. I used to stand up at meetings and say, grateful I get to be here, but that still sounds pretty selfish, so I'm grateful that we all get to be together. Sounds a lot nicer. I wasn't tight with Ray, but I knew Ray, I knew of Ray, I knew what Ray was doing when he was helping so many folks. I was at the morning meeting on Martin Street on December 17th, and I forget what year. Somebody could let me know because I totally forget, but I was at the 7:30 meeting and Ray was there and we were out back smoking. And I was going to my son's birthday and he was going to get sober. And he was going to treatment. And we were both going to do hard things. So one would think it's a joy to go to my son's birthday, but when you've been drinking as long as I had and missed some birthdays, and I was up here visiting from Florida. I moved to Florida, I lived 1,000 miles away, and I was up here to make sure I made my son's birthday with a few years of sobriety. And but it's not a joy because, it's ex-in-laws and ex-husband and it's all this other stuff. It was never just me and my son, so there was just my parents and his dad and his dad's parents, and it was just always uncomfortable. So when we left the meeting that day, we both went on to do hard things that day, and we both did them, and we did them without a drink. I know for a fact he didn't have a drink that day, and I know for a fact I didn't have a drink that day, because his sobriety date was my son's birthday for a long time. For a lot of years, I would hear his anniversary coming up on the calendar when we do announcements, and it would be my kid's birthday, and I was like, and I will just never forget that. I think we were both fearful, He didn't want to go to treatment. I love my son, but I didn't really want to go deal with all the entanglements and all the stuff that had to, that came with that. But we went anyway. I learned in my first year of sobriety that to feel the fear and do it anyway. And Ray's one of those people. He would, from everything I've heard, he would feel the fear and do it anyway. Feel whatever feeling and do it anyway. And we learned how to do that in the fellowship and from each other and having each other's support. And I'm also a member of Narcotics Anonymous. And there's a service structure where all the groups have a representative that goes monthly to something that we call area service. And for a couple of years, area service was meeting at the resource center, and Ray was employed at the resource center. And area service met on the first Saturday of the month from 1:30 until whenever we were done. And Ray was often the person that would volunteer to sit in the office so the doors could be open so we could meet, so we could conduct business, so we could carry the message, open new meetings, take meetings to hospitals and institutions. I mean, this is where it all happens, is at area services, where we conduct business so that we can help more people. And Ray was in the business of saving lives, like a lot of us. And whether he was sitting at a meeting or tucked away in that office making sure that Narcotics Anonymous area service could meet, he was in the business of saving lives, just like so many of us in the fellowship. And he was exceptional at it, and he was one of a kind. And even though we didn't spend a whole lot of time together, he's an unforgettable individual. I remember I was following on Facebook when Bailey got so sick, and I never met Bailey, but man, I was terribly upset when she passed, because I knew how upset he was. And it's that ability to empathize with each other and to, we show up without even showing up. You know what I mean? There's a lot of people who would have liked to have been here today. Here's a prime example. I invited a newcomer to this funeral. Some of you don't know what a newcomer is. She's got 3 days clean, and she needs a sponsor, and I invited her to a funeral to find a sponsor because I knew who would be here. And Ray would have loved that. Ray would have loved that not only were we here to celebrate his life, but we were here to network and make new connections and possibly even find a newcomer and sponsor. Now, she did not make it, But I'm getting ready to go pick her up, and we're gonna go to the 5:30, and then we're gonna go to the 7. So, but he would have loved that. He would have loved that.
I invite her all the time.
He would have loved that. He would have loved that somebody invited a newcomer to his celebration of life. But hey, that's what we do, right? It's, we're a lot to take in, but it's okay. Grateful to be here, grateful all of you guys were here, and it's so nice to meet so many other people that loved him so much, so thank you.
Book is being passed around.